In 2017, there was a game with beautiful visuals, but it was anything but entertaining. It had no item system and no character stats. The entire journey was filled with visual and auditory hallucinations, with multiple whispering voices constantly influencing the player's judgment. Even when battles were won, there was no sense of reward. Playing this game felt more like enduring a prolonged ordeal. In fact, from the very beginning, the developers never intended to create a game that catered to players, because this was designed as an experience of what it feels like to live with psychosis. It deliberately avoided giving players traditional enjoyment to ensure the message would not be misunderstood, and to keep the serious subject of mental illness from being reduced to a simple gimmick. This was certainly a bold choice, and it was this daring experiment that earned the game 3 awards and 5 nominations at the Game Awards in 2017, and 5 awards, including Best Game, and 9 nominations at the BAFTA in 2018. That game is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
That's what you want, isn't it?
The gods will punish you for this.
They can't stop me. I will fulfill my vow, whatever the cost.
Through a thick fog, our protagonist Senua paddles a small boat forward completely alone. From her appearance, we can tell she is a Pict. The sunlight is blocked by towering cliffs, and as she follows the winding river, everything around her radiates both awe and dread. As the boat reaches the shore, the whispers in her ears grow ever more frequent, trying to persuade her to turn back.
It's not too late to get into the boat and go back. No one will judge her. No one will ever know. Oh, she heard us.
But Senua fixes us with a fierce glare, as if she could pierce through the screen and look directly at us. Then, with one decisive kick, she pushes the boat away, telling the voices with her actions that she will not go back. As Senua ventured deeper into the dark forest ahead, the unsettling surroundings quickly turned into a place ravaged by howling winds, and furious beast-like roars echoed in her ears. When Senua finally broke through the swamp, a towering and mysterious structure rose before us. This was her destination, Helheim, the realm of the dead in Norse mythology. The gate to Helheim stood firmly shut. The moment Senua laid her hand on it, a piercing chill swept over her. She seemed to mistake us for Hela and prayed directly toward us, pleading, "Let Dillion go. I will give you everything I have." It was clear that this Dillion had once been the most important person to her, and her entire journey was for him.
I beg you, let him go.
Suddenly, darkness surged, and her arm turned black as if cursed, while the voices in her head grew more frenzied. A group of Viking warriors with skulls upon their heads appeared out of nowhere. Senua drew her sword and fought desperately, but in the end she was struck down. Black marks spread across her head, and her rapidly decaying face twisted in pain and defiance. At that moment, the sound of footsteps approached, and a figure appeared, staring at Senua's lifeless body. To our shock, it was Senua herself. This was Hela's first lesson for her. Death is final, and darkness will never bargain with anyone. Now, the black rod has already spread to your hand. The farther you go, the more it will spread, until it claims the very seat of your soul. By then, that beautiful head of yours will be as cold as the corpse at your feet. So do you still wish to continue? Overcome with hysteria, Senua unleashed her fury on the indestructible gate. At that moment, a chilling message appeared on the screen. The dark rot will grow each time you fail. If the rot reaches Senua's head, her quest is over and all progress will be lost. This was the developer's way of placing psychological weight on the player, making them fear Senua's death just as she feared being consumed by the darkness. In this way, the game bound the player's fear to Senua's own. The gate to Helheim was sealed, and Senua first needed to defeat Varravo, the god of illusion, and Surtur, the fire giant. Only by taking their marks could she break the seal on the gate. The gameplay of Hellblade is divided into 2 main parts, combat and puzzle solving. In combat, aside from the standard light and heavy attacks, careful combinations allow different combos. When facing enemy strikes, Senua can parry at just the right moment and deliver a powerful counterattack. Of course, the enemies will not simply stand still and take hits. At times, they will block her strikes and can even parry her attacks. During battle, the focus mirror at her waist slowly charges. When the spiral pattern on it begins to glow, the player can activate focus, sending Senua into a bullet time state where her attack power increases and she can also regain health. Later in the game, some enemies slip into the shadows, and only by using focus can they be harmed. The puzzle system in the game was also carefully designed. Along the path to the realm of the dead, many gates block the way, each covered with rune symbols. Players must use focus to memorize their shapes and then search the surrounding environment to find the matching runes in order to break the seal. Sometimes the runes can only be discovered by shifting perspective and viewing from the right angle. During exploration, players will also encounter many lore stones. By gazing at them, Senua slowly recalls the Norse myths she once heard from an elder named Druth. Each time she finds a lore stone, she hears another piece of legend, and collecting them all unlocks a hidden story. In addition, the whispers in the game are not merely a form of mental torment. Many times they actually offer useful guidance. For example, during combat, if an enemy attacks from behind, a whisper will call out "careful" right in the player's ear. And during puzzle sections, the whispers can also help guide us toward the correct solution. The elder Druth was a scholar who, in his youth, had been sold to the Vikings as a slave by his enemies. Years later, he managed to escape, but he was no longer welcomed back by his people. Only Senua was willing to accept him, so he shared the Norse myths with her. It was through Druth's tales of Norse mythology that Senua set out on this journey. In the domain of Volraven, the god of illusion, he filled the world with countless visions. Senua had to rely on the whispers to discern reality from illusion and find the correct path in order to unlock the gate to face him in battle. In the domain of Surtur, the fire giant, everything was engulfed in flames and ruin, and Senua had to cross through burning villages while witnessing scenes of massacre and devastation. After enduring these brutal trials, the two seals on the gate to Helheim were finally broken. As she crossed the freezing bridge, the gate to the land of the dead opened, and beyond it lay nothing but darkness, an endless abyss. At that moment, the voice of Senua's father echoed,
There is no one here but me. You fought for love unspoilt by your darkness within.
The man before Senua was her lover, Dillion. According to the whispers of her father, Senua's tribe had been slaughtered by the Vikings, and Dillion was subjected to the most brutal execution, the Blood Eagle. Only Senua, who had been away from the village, survived. Druth told her that a soul taken by the Blood Eagle was an offering to Hela, and that only by carrying the head that held his soul to Helheim could the dead be brought back to life. Determined to revive her beloved, Senua resolutely headed for the gate of Helheim. But to her surprise, the gate suddenly opened. We had always imagined the so-called goddess of death as a majestic, regal figure. What followed instead was utterly horrifying. From the darkness emerged a massive, grotesque, expressionless face crawling slowly toward us. It brought nothing but a crushing sense of dread to Senua. In that moment, the player shared her helplessness, the feeling of a mortal standing before a god. With the whispers pressing in, Senua struggled to her feet and picked up her sword.
Get up! Get up and fight!
After the fall from the bridge, Senua awoke on a cold, damp beach. As a warrior, she had already lost her weapon, but more importantly, she had lost her faith and courage. At that moment, a light caught her attention. The figure practicing with a sword was one she knew all too well. Following the glow, a flash of white light pulled Senua into a memory. The freezing beach was replaced by lush greenery, with sunlight warm and brilliant. This was where Senua first met Dillion. Back then, she was a shy and timid girl. When Dillion noticed she knew a little about swordplay, he invited her to train with him. That was how their story began. Yet this happiness did not last. The scene shifted, and the once lush tree withered, its branches now covered with hanging corpses. The whispers returned, taunting and belittling her, trying to drag her back into the cold reality. But the warmth of that memory gave Senua hope, and she longed to return to that moment with her beloved. For that, she found her resolve once again, resisting the onslaught of darkness, and made up her mind to reclaim Dillion's soul. As Senua approached the great tree, she saw a hollow glowing with an eerie light. Inside was a sword driven deep into the wood. This was Grammar, the legendary sword of Norse mythology, a divine weapon gifted by Odin to mortals, said to hold the power to slay gods. It was also considered the inspiration for the sword in the stone from the tales of King Arthur. Druth told Senua that although the sword appeared intact, it had long ago been shattered into pieces. To restore it, Senua would have to complete Odin's trials: the tower, the swamp, the labyrinth, and blindness. With each trial, fragments of Senua's past gradually unfolded, revealing the story of her life. Both Senua and her mother suffered from psychosis, but in an age when medicine was undeveloped, such an illness was labeled as a curse. Senua's father, the tribe's druid and a man of great standing, believed his wife's condition was a curse from the gods that threatened his position within the tribe. To protect his own status, he burned his wife alive in the name of the gods when Senua was only 5 years old. Witnessing this worsened her condition and left her with deep psychological scars. In the years that followed, she was kept locked inside the house, forbidden to go out, and often abused by her father. He would lock his daughter in a pit and constantly belittle her. When Senua was 15, she happened to see Dillion practicing swordplay. From then on, she began to imitate his movements, and her talent with the sword was soon noticed by Dillion. The two of them began training together, and through the years, Dillion became the only one who accepted Senua for who she was. Their bond grew closer, and eventually they fell in love. Dillion became the light in Senua's darkness, the only hope in her life. Encouraged by him, Senua finally chose to confront her father and leave with her beloved.
I am leaving!
As Senua began a new life with her beloved, she enjoyed a period of happiness with Dillion by her side. But the peace did not last. A plague broke out in their village, claiming many lives. Senua began to recall her father's words about the curse and believed she was the cause of the plague. To protect Dillion, she chose to venture into the wilderness to confront the darkness that haunted her. There she met the scholar Druth, who shared with her the stories he had learned. In the end, gravely wounded, Druth passed away. But before his death, he vowed that he would continue to help Senua in this life and the next. When Senua returned from the wilderness, she saw how it had all begun. Her village had been ravaged by the Vikings, and her beloved was subjected to a brutal execution. This was the painful truth of Senua's past. Odin's 4 trials were in fact reflections of her 4 deepest wounds. The labyrinth reflected the dark room where she had been confined by her father, a place she could never escape. The swamp symbolized the plague that struck her tribe, the one Senua believed was caused by her own curse. The burning tower represented her mother, who was burned alive, and blindness embodied the fear of darkness her father had instilled in her. When Senua emerged from the final trial, she had overcome not only Odin's trials, but also her own memories and inner demons. Just after Senua drew the sword, her father's voice returned, shouting at her and claiming that all the disasters were caused by the curse upon her. The hurtful words from her own father dragged Senua deeper into darkness. He blamed her for bringing the plague and for the deaths of her people. Once again, visions of hell appeared before her eyes, and her father's words struck again and again at her fragile heart. Then Dillion's voice pierced the darkness once more. He said, "This is not your fault. Please, don't let the darkness tear us apart." The words of her beloved opened Senua's eyes. A true warrior needs not only skill, but also unwavering courage and a clear sense of purpose. Now, unlike the timid and fragile Senua she once was, she was finally worthy of reforging Grammar. With Odin's blessing, she returned to the land of the dead, filled with determination to challenge Hela once again. Along the way, Senua fought her way through countless enemies. After defeating the Hellhound Garm, she pushed open the final gate. In the corridor stood a mirror, and within it appeared another Senu, the fragile and tormented version of herself. This figure tried to hold her back, attempting to awaken the painful memories she carried. But now, with love and courage, Senua no longer feared any of it. She resolutely abandoned that fragile girl and walked forward without hesitation, leaving the reflection to fade away behind her. Before the final glowing white door, the runes from the lore stones she had collected began to light up one by one. Those familiar with runes could even try to translate the outer ring, which reveals a single message. The truth of Hela lies within the mirror. The gods will betray us. Reveal the darkness. If all the runes are collected, Druth appears and reveals the truth to Senua. The reason the Vikings attacked their tribe and executed Dillion with the Blood Eagle was because a coward chose to save himself by betraying his people. That coward was Senua's father. Under the weight of such a weak and selfish parent, Senua's suffering only deepened. It was not until her lover's voice appeared that Senua realized none of this was her fault. This time, she gripped Grammar, the god-slaying sword, tightly in her hand and stepped through the glowing door to confront Hela. Compared to their first encounter, neither Senua nor the player felt fear anymore, and it was clear that Hela was not truly the goddess of death, but the deepest nightmare within Senua's mind, a vision she could not bring herself to accept. This time it was Senua who pressed forward, while Hela wailed from the abyss. But Senua was no longer the fragile woman she had once been. This time, she faced Hela's terror as a warrior.
And if you really are Hela, then I have a sword here that can kill a god!
Each of her father's lies summoned enemies that came at her like phantoms, but Senua stood firm, gripping her sword and shattering those painful memories one by one. Yet her father's words continued to torment her, insisting that she could never bring her beloved back. This made Senua realize a bitter truth, because these were illusions. She could summon the courage to face Hela, but because these were illusions, she could never bring back her lover's soul. She fought relentlessly, her vision filling with blood, until at last she could fight no more and collapsed before Hela. This time, Senua would rather believe that Hela was real than just a nightmare within her mind. She only wanted to be with her beloved once more, to return to that sunny day beneath the tree. Holding Dillion's skull in her arms and looking at Hela as she picked up Grimoire, Senua pleaded desperately, "You are real, please, tell me you are real. If you are real, kill me and bring Dillion back. If you are false, then kill me as well, because there is nothing left to hold on to." At last, the god answered the mortal's prayer. Hela drove her blade through Senua's body. And as she fell to the ground, she seemed to see Dillion appear before her, speaking his final words of love to her.
I learned the hard way to not be afraid of death, Senua. Because a life without loss is one without love.
Perhaps it was time for Senua to learn to let go. Hela was the wounded darkness within Senua's mind, the part of her that had entangled her and trapped her in endless suffering. Rather than fighting it, she needed to make peace with it. This was also a reconciliation with herself. She finally understood that her mental illness was not the terrible curse her father had claimed it to be. The visions and voices she experienced were in fact a part of her. So in the end, no matter how many enemies we defeated, Hela could never be overcome. The only path was to let go and embrace her own voice, even if it meant that what she saw would never be the real world. Her journey to reclaim her lover's soul had been nothing more than a dream born from her desire to escape Dillion's death. In the final moments, Hela lifted Dillion's skull and slowly walked to the edge of the bridge. By then, we knew that Hela was in fact Senua herself. If the Senua who had entered Helheim had found the courage to face the darkness, then this moment was when she truly accepted it. She had truly accepted herself. It was a long farewell, and at the same time, a new beginning and encounter with the real and complete Senua.
Never forget what it is like to see the world as a child, Senua. Every autumn leaf is like a work of art. Every rolling cloud a moving picture. Every day, a new story. We too emerge from this magic, like a wave from the ocean, only to return to the sea.
Hellblade tells its story through a blend of myth and fantasy. On the surface, it seems to be the tale of a heroine enduring hardships, venturing forth to slay monsters, and ultimately confronting the goddess of death, Hela, in an attempt to reclaim her lover's soul. Yet its brilliance lies in the fact that the game uses this story as a framework for its gameplay. It is only later in the game that players realize the true story is about a protagonist scarred by deep psychological trauma. struggling constantly against the darkness within herself and gradually finding release as she learns to face life anew. Just as I mentioned in my previous video on I have no mouth and I must scream, no matter how dark someone's past may be. As long as they can embrace themselves and accept what has happened, redemption is always possible. For people like Senua who struggle with mental illness and psychological trauma, their lives are much like the way it is depicted in the game, living each day under the assault of monsters. Yet the strangers around them, and even their own friends and family, often condemn them out of fear, ostracize them out of narrow-mindedness, and discriminate against them out of ignorance, turning the world of those with mental and emotional scars into a living hell. Mental illness and psychological trauma can affect any one of us. When we are in the depths of depression, while also enduring rejection and misunderstanding from others, we come to realize just how utterly hopeless the world can feel. The real suffering does not come only from the illness itself, but from the people around us. When faced with friends struggling with mental illness, if we can offer them more love and compassion as Dillion did, rather than violence and cruelty as Senua's father did, perhaps their world would not be hell. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. That would really motivate me. And if you enjoy this kind of game commentary, consider subscribing to my channel. I'll keep bringing you more content.